Yo team, what is up? Welcome back to the Chief Life Podcast. I am Matthias Turner and today I'm doing a little solo-sode on binge eating. Binge eating is one of those things that I think potentially a lot of us have actually gone through and done ourselves, maybe once or twice or multiple times. I myself was actually an avid binge eater back in the day. I used to starve myself through the week, and then I would get to the stage of the weekend where temptation was too much and I would binge eat extremely. Talking like, I don't know, like 4 blocks of chocolate is one that comes to mind because the server had a sale on, so I was like, oh, 4 blocks for $10, why would you not? I put them all in my drawer. I ate them all in secret in my room, which is absolutely crazy, but I mean, that is a big thing of binge eating, is that it is about what you were doing, how you were doing it, and if it's creating unhealthy habits, and maybe that's the time that you need to start looking at it. So for me, like I said, I was trying to diet in a way, I did that in inverted commas, diet in a way that was not favorable, and I was putting my body in starvation mode. I was under eating, I was trying to calorie count and doing low deficits, like I'm talking what a small female should be doing, and hence why it led me into the stages of really forcing that binge eating, or really bringing on that binge eating. So let's dive into it. Like, what's counted as binge eating? It comes down to large amounts in small windows. So it doesn't necessarily have to be bad food. It can also be, for instance, and when I say bad food, that's probably the worst way to label it, because that's part of the issue, is that it is a big psychological phase where we're like, well, this is good food, this is bad food. If I eat that bad food, then I'm a bad person. If I eat this good food, then I'm a good person. And that's where we need to move away from it, that psychological stages of it. Whereas food is food. Yes, there is some food that is more favorable for us, and yes, there is food that might be less favorable for us in particular, especially if you're having it in high amounts. So what we need to realize is, how does that balance work? So large amounts in small windows, like I said, in favorable or unfavorable amounts of food. If you're constantly binge eating on favorable food, eventually it becomes unfavorable, especially if your goals are heading in the wrong direction. Your midline is above a healthy weight range or a healthy measurement range, then it can lead to disease, which is not great. Another one is feeling that your eating is out of control. So knowing that you yourself don't have control of your eating, that might be a sign of the fact that you are binge eating. It doesn't have to be all the time. You might be able to control it most of the week, for instance, and then come weekends is the time you're like, I'm just out of control. When I'm by myself, I'm out of control. I can't control it. I can't do anything to keep it on rank as such. Eating even when full, not hungry. I mean, that is a hard one, because satiety and knowing if you're full or not, for some people, is a hard point to reach. But I mean, if you're pushing the boundaries every single time that you eat, you're overfilling the plate, and you're eating it just because it's there, and pushing that boundary, then potentially that could be another sign that you are binge eating. Eating till uncomfortable. So that would be also, I guess, building on top of what we just talked about. But eating when you're eating until uncomfortable, or making yourself so full that you vomit, or come close to vomiting, that if that's happening on the regular, once again, it's probably I guess, high signs that you are binge eating. Eating in secret, and in particular eating in secret frequently. So for instance, like I said, when you're by yourself over a weekend, if you're going out because you're lonely and you're eating in secret at home by yourself, binge eating to fill that void and get the endorphin release, then potentially, or no, definitely, that's a binge eating sign. So there's things that we should potentially work towards, which I'm going to dive into. It's not just all about naming and shaming what binge eating is. When you're depressed, ashamed, guilty, upset about the eating that you're doing, then that is another sign that binge eating is present. Always dieting but never losing weight. If you're someone who is consistently dieting, always on that next diet, always on that thing, week in, week out, yet every weekend you're still not able to keep to that, and you're binge eating on weekends, which is affecting what you're doing throughout the week, then that is a fair sign, or that's a definite sign that you are binge eating. Always on a Monday, that whole concept of it's all right, I'll start next Monday. Like Monday's my day when I'm going to get back to my diet for the weekend. Right now, like Friday afternoon, who cares? I'm going to have some beers because we always meet up after work and we have some beers, and there might be some cheese there as well. And then Saturday morning, I'm going out with friends for breakfast, and we're going out for this place that has incredible blah blah blah, and I'm going to have it anyway. And then for lunch, we're meeting up with another set of friends, and we're going to this restaurant, and it's got this place, it's got this food that's not that favorable, but I'm going to really make sure that I have it because I don't want to miss out, and they're all going to be having it. And then Saturday night, we're going out for drinks, and the spiral just continues, and it keeps happening. We keep telling ourselves, well, we have to do this because we are going to this place that has this thing, and I just have to because I cannot miss out. It's that whole FOMO. And that's obviously also part of it. It's always coming back to that psychological state of, well, why do you feel the need to necessarily always have that food? Can you have less of that food instead of having massive amounts that are going to throw your caloric load out for that whole weekend or out for that whole week? So the concept is if you're eating a set amount of food for a week, and you're in a caloric deficit, and then on that weekend you go and binge eat so much that you calorie load the heck out of yourself, you can potentially throw your whole week of calories, or you can essentially eat your whole week of calories in that weekend, which is insane. But then that would make sense as to why you're not dropping weight. So some causes as to why binge eating might happen. And I mean, these are interesting little studies that I've found across the board. One cause they did talk about is genetics, being that genes affect the eating disorders. There's a gene that controls the brain circuits, and that's in charge of controlling your appetite. But something that we do know is that genes are able to be turned on and off to some extent through epigenetics. So based on your lifestyle factors, if you are getting into a negative lifestyle and these foods are constantly sneaking in, then you're more likely to keep binge eating because your brain is wired to be in that state of, I need more of this food because it's going to make me feel better. Whereas if we're in a positive state in ourselves, what will typically happen is that gene is not going to be firing as much, and that binge eating is not going to be getting called on as much as if you're in that negative state. Family, their habits. So, I mean, this is an interesting one based on what your family does in social situations or at home, based on how they talk about and how they perceive food can be a massive one. And like, for instance, it might be the case of, well, we did it, so why can't you? Hey, like a mother talking to the daughter, hey, I lived on ice cream every single night and I was fine with it. Yet the daughter is then binge eating on ice cream and not responding well to it, and that balance isn't working for her. She needs to find some form of new balance. So just because your family lived off of it or did it that way, then it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be good for every single individual. I've found that like for instance, there's a lot of talk around, a lot of talk for it around gluten and dairy and how it's changed over time, and a lot of the like grandparents, for instance, saying, well, we never had problems with it when we were younger. The issue is that the product has changed since when they were younger. So yeah, they might not have had those issues, but now they are starting to, or now we are starting to as individuals, as the product changes and as we as civilization progress, I guess. It might be their beliefs, yeah. Once again, so that's pretty much basing on their beliefs, on your family's beliefs, based on what they think is good food, might be a real trigger for you and you as an individual. So I mean, it might be that whole concept of, well, mum can find a balance in her stage of life because she's content right now, whereas son and daughter might not be able to, and so they keep binge eating and they keep eating to the extent where they are past fullness. Or the stage of where your parents are obese and you're living off of what they have set as a role model, or as a stage of, their role model state is, hey, I am obese and it come from the foods that we're eating, and that is all right to be. And I mean, we're going to talk about body image later and how that comes into play, but just for right now on this topic, on the family side of things, that might be something that can be a bit of a trigger for you. Depression, and this is an interesting one. Depression comes down, or it does talk about, is it the chicken or the egg? Like, do you binge eat because you're depressed, or are you depressed because you binge eat? And I think that it can be different cases, like different strokes for different folks with this one. Depression is a massive one, and it really comes down to people trying to find anything that would help them out in that moment in time, like any little bit of peace or insight that they can give to their body to say, hey, I feel better right now, and that's good, that's what I want more of. That's exactly what food's going to do. It's going to give you good endorphins. It releases the hormones from the reward center in the brain, and all of a sudden you start feeling better because you've gone and had this food. The problem is that it only lasts for 10 minutes, and then you dive bomb into almost like a bipolar state where you're unhappy again. And this is a perpetual cycle. It keeps happening and happening and happening, and that's a good cause. It's pretty much the perfect recipe for binge eating, really, because you go and say, for instance, you buy a packet of Tim Tams, you eat that whole packet of Tim Tams, but you've got 3 in the house, and all of a sudden it's been 10 minutes and you've had 1 packet of Tim Tams and you're starting to crash. So you're like, oh well, I want that endorphin release again, so you go and get the next packet. A lot of it does come down, not necessarily, I'm not talking about depression in particular, but a lot of it comes down to out of sight, out of mind. And binge eaters, I know I was a binge eater that used to go for the drive. It was like you had a lot more chances of saying no to it, but you still went and did it anyway. I was the person that would drive to the service station on a weekend, even though everything else was shut. I'd get myself to the service station, drive there, and that was my little outlet of trying to figure out how to get some sort of food in to make me feel better at that point in time. Once again, I'll dive into that a little bit deeper as we get there. But yeah, depression is another cause for it. Low self-esteem. What others say about you might be something to trigger you. And you comparing yourself to others is another massive one. And I mean, I talked about this on a podcast that I was interviewed on for Accelerate Strength a few weeks ago. And the concept of when you see someone who is incredibly fit individual, doing something that might be less favorable, like for instance, they're smashing their face with ice cream when you go to the ice cream shop, or they're out drinking alcohol, and all you see is that incredibly fit individual doing the thing that they are doing, and you justify it for yourself as to, well, if he can do it, I can get away with doing it. The issue is that we don't see what they're doing for the rest of the 23 hours and 45 minutes that they're doing in that day, let alone every other day of the week or the month or the year. And so the issue comes where we are comparing ourselves to someone like that and justifying why we should still be able to do it. The other side of it is, or pretty much that covers it for everyone. It's not just about seeing a bodybuilder, it's about justifying what people are doing to yourself, and comparing yourself is never a good way to go about anything. Like, unless you were trying to compete against someone in a competition format, then yes, that's a great way to do it. But if you're comparing yourself against someone else, like their body type, the way that they do things, even the amount of food that they're eating, it's not always going to necessarily work for you as an individual. There might be hormone issues going on for you that they don't have issues with, and that's where they're able to potentially maybe eat more food. They might be more, they might do more in the day, like they might put more energy out within the day, hence why they're able to, for instance, eat more. And then you go and compare yourself to something like, well, hold up, if it's a guy that's a builder compared to a guy that is an office worker, and the builder might be having, say, like 4,000 to 5,000 calories in the day, and the office worker can only potentially have 3,000 calories in the day, but they try to eat what the builder is doing, they're going to put on size, and that's because they've compared themselves to what someone else is doing. It always does come down to figuring out what works best for you. What others say, like I said, that can be a trigger. That can be something that just upsets you and sends you into a spiral. And once again, you go looking for that good endorphin release, that quick hit, and that we will talk about stress eating in a sec. Negative body imaging. This is a massive one, and it's where, for those who don't know, it's where you essentially look at yourself and say, I'm so fat, I'm so bad, I'm so this, I'm so that, in a negative light, that you just put yourself down so much that it's also like another trigger for going and having that next binge eat, because it's like, well, I'm fat and I'm worthless. I might as well just make myself happy by eating more food. That it's almost like on Austin Powers on I think it was Fat Bastard. He's like, I can't even remember what it said. Something like, I'm sad because I eat, and I eat because I'm sad. It's that whole concept of trying to fill the void. But negative body imaging from yourself is a massive thing, let alone if someone else is saying it to you, then it can be really quite a depressing side of things. And realistically, we're going to talk about ways that we can get out of this. Once again, we're still just going through the causes of it right now. Stress and anxiety, work, breakups, divorce, death was in the family, like you name it. If there's a big stressful event that's going to happen in your life, you are going to be challenged at that stage of your life with how you look after yourself. And based on how you look after yourself will show as to how you can turn up for everyone else as well. The issue is that a lot of the time we're trying to turn up for everyone else so much that we put ourselves last. And that's when things like binge eating come in, or when we start to we just don't look after ourselves. So the food choices we make might be like, hey, I'm just going to have pizza every night because I can order it. I don't have to cook that way. I just go pick it up and I eat it on my way home from work. Or I eat it on the way home to the hospital, or whatever it might be. And that is a negative sense in itself, because it starts to put you on a lower level. So you're rocking up for someone and you're already at 80% or 60% or whatever it might be. So you're not showing up for that person as it is. You're trying to do them a favor by being there for them. But once again, you're just not able to be yourself. Your best self is what I should say. Extreme dieting, and this goes back to the example I was giving. I was on such a negative calorie intake that of the weekend my body was just like, feed me anything and everything. And once I started, it was so hard to stop. So extreme dieting, especially if you're yo-yoing, if you're someone who goes on a diet for 3 weeks and then you put all your weight back on, and then you go on another diet for 4 weeks, and then you put all your weight back on, and then you go on another diet. And so let's say, for instance, 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off, or whatever it might be. If you're a yo-yoer, that's a fair sign that potentially in those times that you are binge eating or not keeping those habits up to scratch, which is things that you should be doing. Peer pressure is another one. If you are out and about, it might be, this is more so based around like alcohol, and then alcohol might lead to something else such as binge eating. So if you are someone who goes out and you get peer pressured into drinking, and then all of a sudden you find yourself binge eating whilst you're drinking, then that can be the trigger that sets you off. But realistically, what we need to talk about is triggers in general, the things that might set you off. It might be the fact that every time you sit at home on a Saturday night by yourself watching TV, that's the binge night. So it's like, okay, on those nights I need to go and get this, and this, and they're the foods I'm going to consume during that time. The trigger is actually being at home by yourself watching the movie. So that's the thing that sets off the reaction or the action of wanting to have food. So what we might need to do is look at how your triggers how your triggers are setting you off firstly, and how we can manipulate or change those triggers to make sure that that's not happening. So one thing to do might be have a friend around to watch a movie with you instead. Or it might be going out to a different location instead of your home. So for instance, it might be going to your friend's house or going to the movies instead, and trying to change that trigger of, okay, I binge eat during that time. So, hey, make sure you have a healthy dinner so you've got less room for binge eating, and maybe still keep in the habit of having some form of food, but only allowing yourself so much of it. Don't let yourself eat a six pack of donuts. It's about having one donut instead. And this is all well and easy to say, but the things that come into play, we will talk about a little bit later, but that really is like what happens is usually we start the funnel, we kick it off, and then it gets going. So I mean, that's a lot of the causes. The complications it can cause for individuals is a poor quality of life. Like I said, living at 60 or 80% of your total functioning. Problems functioning at work or with your personal life or social situations. Social isolation is another thing. Obesity, medical conditions such as obesity, diabetes, heart disease, gastrointestinal stuff, sleep, stress, skin, depression, bipolar style of mood, and anxiety, substance disorders or substance use and disorders. So, I mean, there is a lot of things that can happen there, and obviously a lot of them are negative. So, if you are someone who is binge eating quite often, then what we do want to do is figure out how we can change the cycle. How can we break that cycle, and how can we start something new? Because obviously, you're listening to this because you're trying to help someone, or because you're trying to help yourself, support yourself through something that is binge eating. And I think when it comes to prevention, there's a lot of different methods I'm going to go through. I'm going to talk about a few different things that worked pretty well for me as an individual, but also things that we've seen work really well for our members and our clients, the people who we do nutrition coaching with week in, week out. These people that come to us and say, hey, like, I am someone who just goes and has cheese and beers every single Friday afternoon, and that's what sets me off. Or, hey, I just really like something sweet every day, and it so happens that I've got blocks of chocolate at home, and I'll have one block of chocolate, like one line of chocolate, one row of chocolate, and then all of a sudden it turns into a whole block. How do I stop this? So that's a lot of things that I'm going to talk about now, going into the prevention side of things. And realistically, like I said before, a lot of it comes down to psychological. What's going on between the brain? Where is your state and how do you picture yourself? How do you... what do you think of yourself? These are all things that are going to come up as to why you're probably binge eating. I know that was the case for me. I was lonely. I was probably borderline depressed at times in my life when I was binge eating. I felt like I was doing the whole negative body imaging. Like, I would go to the gym so much and think, well, I don't have that six pack that guy has, so I'm worthless or whatever. I need to keep starving myself to make sure I get the body, I'm doing inverted commas again, the body that everyone thinks they should have, to make me happy. That's what's going to make me happy and make people desire me as an individual. Whereas realistically, it comes down to, well, you're just wanting to be desired. You just look like you as an individual is just lonely right now in that point in time. So how do we remove that loneliness to make sure that you are not always looking for external products like food to get you through that loneliness? And it comes down to connecting again, connection with individuals. But I mean, I've got a whole heap of different things written down here. That's actually, I don't know if I've written that down there or not, but connection I think is a massive one. If we are feeling loved and we are feeling needed ourselves, it's going to make you feel a lot more fulfilled. So having that connection in your life, if you are someone who doesn't have a lot of social interactions outside of work, and you're finding that you're binge eating quite a lot, I would start to influence you guys to get out a little bit more. And I know that can be incredibly hard. I know it can be incredibly tough sometimes, but knowing that putting yourself in a situation where even though you might feel a little uncomfortable, is going to help you out a lot, can be really worthwhile. I heard a really good tip the other day is if you were to go to a party, and even if say you rock up by yourself and you feel really uncomfortable, one of the best things you could do is go to the host of the party and just ask, what can you do? Put yourself to work, give yourself purpose and that moment, and all of a sudden you feel a hell of a lot better, and it puts you at ease because you are now helping the host. You are now important to that situation. So yeah, getting yourself out a lot more. And it might not be that you go to a party every single weekend, because that might be your trigger point. It might be the fact that you just spend more time with friends, or you set up situations like on a Sunday morning, because Saturday night is my trigger. On a Sunday morning really early, I'm going to set a task to go and do with some friends or with someone to hold me accountable, to make sure that on Saturday night I'm not going out and binge drinking or binge eating. So a lot of it comes down to gratitude for external things. So that might be that you wake up every day and list 3 things that you're grateful for. It might be gratitude for internal things that you are grateful for about yourself. And that can be a really hard thing, in particular if you are a negative body image person. If you are someone who's always hating on yourself, what I want you to do is really think as to what are the things that you love about yourself. And it might be the fact that, hey, I love my nails right now, or hey, I love my hair right now, and that's great. That's one thing. But let's start to take it to 2 things tomorrow. So, okay, today it was my hair. Tomorrow it might be, hey, I love my elbows, or I love my triceps. I love my chest. I love my thighs, or whatever it is. Don't think about the things that are negative. Don't go and sit there and be blah blah blah. This is bad. This is bad. That's not the point of the product, or sorry, of the project. What we are looking to do is just looking for those internal gratifications. Like, what are you grateful for about yourself? And it might not be that you can say a body part right now. It might be that you say, I'm grateful that I always think of the best of people, and that might be where you start. Journaling and reflecting is a massive thing that can really help your gratitude practice. And it seems bizarre that we're talking about gratitude right now when the issue might be, when the issue is binge eating that we're actually talking about. But the big thing is that if you can feel fulfilled in yourself, what happens is you stop relying on these external products to make you feel better. And all the time it comes down to the fact, like I said before, the psychological state that we are in, and that we are in a negative state of mind, that we don't really believe that we are deserving of potentially being happy, and this is our way of making ourselves happy. Like the fact that you can't find happiness in yourself, so you go and rely on these external products instead. Journaling can be massive because you can write down how you're feeling. You can write down, like, sometimes just putting pen to paper is massive, and putting your thoughts somewhere where maybe someone else isn't going to see them might be something that can set you off, and set you off in a good way, meaning set you into the spiral of writing down everything you're feeling, all of your emotions onto that paper, and that might make you feel incredibly good. It's like getting the situation, getting the shit off of your chest, really, like getting all the stuff that's upset you off of your chest. That might be a really good thing for you. The other thing I would add to journaling is reflecting. So when things go right, journal about it and reflect why it went right. Or do a journal at the start of the day. It might be the 3 things you're most grateful for and something you want to achieve on that day, and that's how you journal to start with. And then that night you go ahead and you reflect on the day. Hey, yes, I'm still grateful for these things, and yes, I got that thing ticked off, or that was the intent of the day and I achieved that today. It's a really good way just to start to build some confidence, because you're seeing that you are working towards something and actually achieving it. And confidence is massive, in particular when it comes to something like binge eating, because typically it comes on because we're not feeling confident in our own ability. Applying yourself. So this is something that that worked for me, was applying myself to some form of challenge or some form of competition or charity or weekend events or something like that. So to start with, one of the big things that got me out of probably one of my biggest binge eating phases was I went and did the Whole30. And this might be too extreme for some people, but the Whole30 is pretty much eating only paleo, so nothing processed, no sugars, no dairy, no gluten or grains at all. I think even down to like no nut butters. It was literally like you can eat whole foods only. And that was a really interesting challenge for me, because I wanted to do 30 days, because that's the challenge, whole food for 30 days only, just to see how you responded. And there's no limitations on the food that you're eating, on the amount of food that you're eating, just the types of food that you're eating. And I did that, and I remember going out to parties with people, and I had my housemates with me who knew I was doing the Whole30, and they were eating like it was a little, I think it was like a 2-year-old birthday party we went to, and the 2-year-old birthday party we went to had literally like 4 or 5 ridiculously good looking cakes. And that was probably my biggest testing moment. I remember seeing that, just being like, oh my god, it'd be so easy just to snap and eat these foods. And I think I was at day 26 or 27, and one of my housemates came up to me and she's like, come on, you're almost there, you might as well just give it a shot. And I'm like, no. That was like the thing that kind of kept me over the line. Like, you could give up right now, but it's not something that you want to do. You set out for 30 days, so you really need to stick to your guns here. And believe me, it was incredibly hard. Like, that self-talk was ridiculous at that party, as I know you guys would probably have dealt with yourselves. Like, that's the biggest thing, is dealing with yourself and trying to get through that situation. So for me, that was one of the big turning points, was firstly having a program like that. From there, I always found doing things like setting myself a challenge, like for instance, going and doing a CrossFit comp, or going and doing a triathlon, going and doing an event where you know you need to turn up, you need to be there for yourself on that day. By applying yourself to something like that, it's always in the back of your head as to, well, hold up, no, I shouldn't be having this right now because I'm working towards this competition. But the big thing is that although you might be relying on that endpoint for that time, what I find is that it builds some really good habits in that time, and sometimes that can be enough just to change your ways and change those triggers that I was talking about before, to set you up for success moving forward. It's not like, sometimes we kind of talk bad on challenges, mean like a gym challenge, or the way that gym challenge is laid out, because it typically says, hey, start at this date, end at this date, and so many people think of it as, well, I'm going to do that 6-week challenge, and by the time I get to the end of the 6 weeks, then I can go back to eating all the food that I've been missing out on this whole time, and that's when yo-yo dieting starts happening. When you're doing it for yourself because you're working towards an event, you start to feel how good you can feel, and you get to that event and you're feeling incredible. And although you might have some things to treat yourself after that event, like, hey, I've worked so hard, I'm going to go out and have pizza, or I'm going to have some beers, or hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to have some ice cream, whatever it might be, you almost, or what I've found typically, in particular with our members, is that they'll wake up the next day feeling like crap because they've gone and eaten food that's not favorable for their bodies and how they're fueled. And so typically what we find is that they say, you know what, like, it was good at the time, but the aftermath is so bad that I really don't want to be in that state again. So I'm going to continue to not really have that right now. And that works really well for people. And I think that's kind of a state where people get to eventually. They're like, oh, you know what, like, yes, I enjoy that food, but it's really just every once in a while for me, because I know that I don't feel great after having it. And I mean, that's where Stace and I are at with dairy and gluten. Like, gluten, we just never have. Dairy is like an every once in a while. Like, we might have some ice cream here and there that has dairy in it. But I mean, typically I'll find that I sleep like crap the night that I have dairy. And so that's enough of a trigger for me to say, especially now that we've got Mads, our little daughter, I'm like, it's not worth it really, because if I then have one bad night's sleep, it's typically going to lead on to, like, and then also she has a bad night's sleep, say for instance, then that's 2 nights of bad sleep, and then I know that my whole week is going to be thrown out because I've had 2 bad nights of sleep, and trying to catch up on that can be really tough. So that's almost like how my process starts to work now. And what we need to do is, it's not just as easy as saying, well, this food isn't good for me, so therefore I can't eat it, because once again it goes back to, well, then we look at food as good and bad, and then we put ourselves into a state of, well, I had bad food, so I'm a bad person, and you keep triggering the negative response, which is sending you in the wrong direction. If you're not really a competitive person, that's fine. Like, put yourself into, maybe it might be the fact that you start going to a gym and doing a program of some sort, or move away from that space. Go to something like a charity. Like, apply yourself to a charity that works on Saturday nights. If that's the time that you're setting off, like, do something at the time when you are getting most triggered to go and have the food that you have. Applying yourself to a charity, it does a multiple amount of things. It all of a sudden it starts to apply you to something else. So it's once again, it's that contribution thing, which helps with connection, because you are contributing to a greater cause, which makes you feel fulfilled. You're starting to connect with other individuals, and in turn you get a really good response from that. Weekend events is what I was talking about before. So for instance, Saturday night's the night that you're typically triggered. Setting something up on a Sunday morning early, so you have to be up on time, you have to be making sure that you're in that location at time, can be something that really helps you out. Setting up a weekend event where, like I said, if Saturday nights is the binge night, when you typically watch a movie and that's what sets you off, finding friends to be with during that time, or finding someone to be with during that time that's not going to enable that situation for you. Social environment. So sometimes applying yourself to a social environment, like we've pretty much been talking about, can be the thing that gets you away from eating those foods. Sometimes it can be the thing that sets you into eating those foods. So figuring out what's a positive and what's a negative environment for you, once again looking for those triggers and saying, well, hold up, every time I go and hang out with these people, I end up binge eating with them because we just enable each other. It might be the fact that you say, okay, well, it's 1, because of the location that we're going to, it's 2, because we've got all of the food there, and it's 3, because we are all enabling each other. How do we sit down and talk together to say, hey, we're in a negative situation here, or something that's not that positive or that's beneficial for us right now, that favorable for us right now. how do we change this situation altogether? How can we support each other through all of this? Or you remove yourself from that group for a set amount of time. Say, for instance, hey, 3 weeks away, just so you can start to set new habits and getting away from that situation that might be triggering you. Social environments might be a stage of setting you up for positive. So we see this a lot at the gyms. Like if you go to a CrossFit gym, you'll see people change their lives because they get into the situation where at first it might seem really overwhelming and really scary, but all of a sudden they start to realize that this place has a community and these people are supportive and these people are just like me, and they've maybe come from a situation where they were doing similar things to me, and oh my god, like these are just everyday people just doing everyday things and seeing their day off really well with a little bit of a gym session each day. And that might be the thing, like it's a positive environment that starts to change your mindset, starts to make you feel good about yourself and about the things that you're doing. And then you start to kind of unwind that binge eating style thing. You start to fulfill yourself a little bit more. Self-talk, this is a massive one. If you find that you are someone that negatively talks to yourself, there are a few things you can tend to do around that. But one thing is the negative voice in your head, knowing that that's not you, that you are not connected to that as such. Yes, it might talk to you every once in a while, but it's not you, and what it says is not true. It's one thing that we went and did was a mentor course a few years ago, and our mentors were saying, hey, whenever you have that negative voice rock up in your head, one of the best things you can do is give it a name. And give it a stupid name. So I think Stacey's stupid name that she gave her negative voice was Fluffy. And so whenever Fluffy would rock up and give her some negative talk, she would spin around and just be able to say, fuck off, Fluffy. Like, I don't need you right now. You're not helping the situation. So that's one thing, is naming your negative voice. The second thing is applying positive talk to yourself. So I love this about me, or I am. And this is a good way to outlook on your goals as well. Imagine like you've already achieved them. I am, and state what your goal is. And it might be the fact that even if you do not believe that statement right now, it's something that you can start to work towards. And if you're saying it every single day and you're really trying to, I guess if you're enforcing, it's almost like envisioning it, visualizing it, that can be something that kind of really turns it around. So I am so happy in my body. I am so happy in my skin. I love my arms. I love my body. I love this about me. I love that I can go to the gym and feel confident in myself. I love that I go to this space and do this thing. Doing that and starting to put those things in place, those words, changing that wording around can be massive for how you start to feel day to day. And it doesn't just happen overnight. These things have to keep happening. You can't just say it once and think you're going to feel 100% better. It's never going to happen. All of these things come down to consistency. And to be honest, you're probably in the state that you're in due to the things that you've consistently done as well. If we go back to the causes, a lot of them come down to consistency. What your family have done your whole life, what your surroundings are doing to you, what like your head is doing to you. Those things are massive on the outcome of as to where you've come to right now. So what we need to do is work against that and consistently do the things that are good for our bodies right now and good for your brain to help you get away from the stages of wanting to binge eat. What's your why? This is a massive one, and this is something probably that really helped me as an individual, because I started kind of realizing that the things I was doing was not gearing me up for success. So figuring out what your why is, applying yourself to something bigger than yourself is kind of a good way to put it. So it's like this why is such a desiring factor to you as to something you really want to see happen in the world, or something you really want to work towards in the world. And so it starts to make it easier for you to make those choices as to well, this is my why, and this is why I'm not going to do these things right now. And something like having a six-pack is not a big enough reason that's ever going to get you over the stages of binge eating. It has to be like, I want to remove health issues within the world. Like, that's a bold statement, but it might be something like that. And the best way to do this is going 7 levels deep on your why. And we've talked about this plenty before, but just to recap on what we're talking about, it's asking why you're doing something. So why are you dieting? Let's answer that question now. So why are you dieting? Writing it down, don't know why. Why are you dieting? Okay, and it might be, because I want a six-pack. Okay, why do you want a six-pack? Because I want to feel good about myself and I want others to notice me with my shirt off. Okay, why do you want others to notice you? Because right now I feel really lonely in myself. Okay, why do you feel lonely in yourself? Because I'm not getting to have that interaction with people that I want day in, day out, and it's important to me to make sure that I am getting interaction, and I'm not getting that right now. Okay, well, why is that important to you? Because at the end of the day, blah, 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 blah. Like, it keeps going down. It's just a big rabbit hole, realistically, and once you get 7 levels deep, that might be a terrible example, I'm sorry, but it might have set you off on the right path, and once you get to about 7 levels deep, we start to see the reasons unpack as to why it really matters to you as an individual to what the outcome should be, and it gives you something to kind of work towards, and that might be a starting place, or it might be an ending place for some of you guys, and I think realistically it does come down to applying yourself to something is a big part, because typically we're trying to fill a void with eating all of these foods. Now, something I want to touch on is that you can healthfully refeed. Like, just because you on a Saturday night go out for burgers and you might have a beer and you might have some ice cream and you eat until you are full or just over full, that is not saying that you are a binge eater. Like, if you do that every single weekend, but throughout the week everything else is really on point and it's literally like a refeed for your body because you've been in a calorie deficit for the week and you're in a state of, hey, I just want to enjoy myself with my friends, that's what balance is. That is finding a good state of life, and that is a really healthy place to be in. When it comes down to stopping at the service station and buying those 4 blocks of chocolate and eating them in your room by yourself, that's where it comes down to binge eating, and it comes down to, hey, is there a psychological disorder going on? Is this an eating disorder that's going on right now, or is it something that I just need to fill a void to be able to get myself out of? I don't know if that's the best place to leave it or not. I'm just trying to think of maybe some other situations I can help you guys with in regards to how this might apply. But I think the biggest thing is, let's maybe just write down right now, like that's probably the best way to do it, is write down what you can do right now or this weekend to stop yourself from getting into the situation where you are going to be binge eating, if this is something that happens to you. And it might not be this weekend. I shouldn't keep saying this weekend. I say this weekend because that was when it was for me. It was always on the Saturday night. I would go out and I would have a few drinks and then I would come home and I'd be lonely, so I'd go to the service station, which was literally just around the corner. Could walk up there and I would just binge eat because of it. Yeah, quite a crazy thing. So what is the number one thing you can do right now to set yourself up for success? Like, taking that first step is going to be massive. And once again, it's not going to happen overnight. Using consistency. Consistency is going to be your best friend. Applying yourself to something like a challenge is really worthwhile. And I mean, given the time of year, right now, as we're leading into Christmas, it's typically that time when binge eating tends to happen a lot. And it's where you come back from holidays and you feel like absolute garbage because you put on 5, 7, 10 kilos, whatever it might be, because you've gone absolutely ham on the ham and every other food that comes into sight. So what it comes down to is almost doing some preparation now, so you're moving into Christmas with a different mindset. Like, it's not about absolutely binging on everything you can and drinking everything you can just because it's Christmas. Start to think about what the outcome might be. Like, hey, this is what you were aiming for, and this is the outcome that came from it. What are the things that we can do to start to set yourself up for success? I'm the type of person, this is something I did want to touch on that I didn't actually. So I'm the type of person that likes to go cold turkey on things, because I find a little bit is too much. A little bit is something that sets me back off and goes in the wrong direction. So when I would choose to do something like the Whole30, I had to get absolutely everything out of the house that could have potentially set me off. Like I think I went to the state of not even having peanut butter, not even having any sort of nut butters at all. So I made sure that they were out of the house because that was something that I would have gone for. So setting yourself up for success, and this might be hard for those who have families, but ask them to support you through it, and just set yourself up so you do not have the food in the pantry, you do not have the food in the freezer, you do not have the food in the house. And what that does is set you up for success, because you have to make a lot of decisions between hopping in your car and driving to the service station, or driving to Woolies, or driving to Coles, driving to the place where you get your food. And that can be that extra decision time can be all you need to be able to say, you know what, maybe I just need to drink a little bit more water, or you know what, maybe I'm just going to have a balanced snack or meal right now, or I'm just going to eat a little bit more of what dinner was so I don't go off and have that thing, or go and binge on that thing. Sorry, I just need a quick drink. Cool. So I think that's probably a pretty good place to leave it, guys. I hope that has been helpful. If you do have any extra insights that you would like to add to the conversation, please feel free to reach out to me, Matty@thechieflife.com. But I mean, this is something that we do help individuals with on our nutrition coaching. It's about setting up better pathways, better triggers, or better situations to make sure that you're not triggering yourself into a negative state or into that negative binge eating pattern. So if that is something that you are interested in doing, in particular in the new year, we have plenty of coaches that are very happy to work alongside you. And what we do is we fit you with the best individual for yourself and your needs, and work towards the goals that you're working towards. And realistically, you do not have to be an athlete. Most of our clients are not high-level athletes at all. Like, you do not have to be an athlete to work towards a goal with nutrition. I think that's where maybe sometimes the disconnect is as well. I'm not an athlete, so maybe I don't need to concentrate on this. It comes down to health and longevity and what you're trying to achieve as an individual. The fact that you want to feel more confident in yourself can come down to changing your nutrition. Like, that can be something that really helps you out. And a lot of the stuff that we work with you on is not just about nutrition. It's also about mindset and setting up better triggers throughout the week, or setting reminders or alarms or something along those lines to make sure that you are set in place to set you up for success based on the things that you're telling us that you want to be doing. If you come to us and say, hey, I want to work out 3 times this week, we'll say, okay, well, how can we best facilitate you working out 3 times this week? Is it the fact that we need to message you on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to make sure you get into the gym? Is it the fact that you need to book in some PTs right now and let me know once you've booked those in to get you along to the gym? So setting yourself up for success and using a support group, an accountability coach, is essentially what we're doing through our nutrition coaching. And that's crazy because I talked about going to the gym rather than talking about nutrition. But that might be the thing, once again, the trigger that sets you up for success, because when you go to the gym, you want to eat healthier because you don't want to undo the work you've been doing. Which actually, just before I finish up, I feel like I'm going in circles a little bit, but that is a big one. People tend to binge eat and they say, don't worry, I will just work it off when I get to the gym, which is a ridiculous method that will never ever work. You cannot out-train a bad diet. I think, I definitely saw this the other day. I can't remember what meal it was, but it was a meal from either Hungry Jack's or McDonald's. And it was like a Coke, a burger, a sundae, and a set of fries. And it said you would have to do at least 4,000 burpees, chest to deck, proper burpees, to be able to come even close to burning this amount of calories off, which is absolutely insane. So, I mean, people who are using that method, just burned off in the gym, that's not that's never going to work. So stop trying to use it, please. It's never ever going to work. It's never a favorable way to go about things. You can eat more food based on the fact that you are going to the gym. Yes, you need to fuel that correctly, but trying to out-train a bad diet because you've gone and binged on the weekend, so you have to go and flog yourself or work so hard in the gym, that's not a good way to go about things. It's not a very favorable way. It's not a good way to set your mind either, because it starts to put you into that, once again, negative state. So hopefully that's been helpful, team. Once again, reach out if you do have any insights. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, take a little screenshot and share it on your Instagram page. Give us some love. I would love to see a few more posts about the podcast. That would be incredible. we always just try to help you guys, and if you are enjoying it, we would love to see that. So thanks heaps for listening, team, and I look forward to talking and hearing from you soon.